"Say hi to the sharks," my daughter-in-law whispered as she pushed me off the yacht. My son Ethan just stood there smiling. Their plan was to steal my $3 billion fortune. But when they returned home later that evening, I was sitting in my favorite armchair with a special gift waiting for them. If you're watching this, subscribe. Let me back up to how an ordinary Tuesday led to me plummeting into the Atlantic. At 67, I still believed family meant something. The morning began beautifully. Ethan called me himself, no assistant, and invited me on a celebration cruise. "Mom, we want to toast your recovery," he'd said. Just the three of us. I'd been recovering from a hip replacement for 6 weeks and was desperate for any sign that my son and his wife Lila still wanted me around, since my husband Thomas died 2 years ago, leaving me his tech empire fortune. I wore my navy dress and took a taxi to the marina. The yacht was pristine. Ethan hugged me at the dock while Lila watched from the deck, her smile sharp as glass. "Isn't she beautiful?" Ethan asked. "We're thinking of the Caribbean next month." He didn't mention they'd bought it with the money I'd given them for his consulting firm. $3 million I suspected never reached an account. The first hour was pleasant. We sailed into calm water. Lila poured mimosas and talked about renovating the house, my old house, which I'd signed over after Thomas died. Then Ethan started asking questions, casual at first, about my will, the trust, whether I'd considered changes to simplify things. "Probate can be complicated, Mom," he said, refilling my champagne. "We want to make sure everything's taken care of." That's when I noticed Lila filming me with her phone. Not openly, held at an angle while pretending to take selfies, catching me drinking and talking finances, building evidence. The pieces clicked, the surgery, the paperwork they'd insisted on handling, the temporary power of attorney forms, the way my advisor stopped returning calls. "Ethan," I said, setting down my glass, "I'd like to go back to shore now." His mask slipped. "I'm afraid that's not going to happen, Mom," he said, voice hard. "We need to talk about your health, about your memory." "Memory?" I was sharper than both of them. "You've been showing signs of dementia," Lila added. "We have it documented. Doctors agree you're no longer capable of managing finances." That's absurd. But even as I said it, I saw the setup. Miles from shore, no other vessels, just the three of us and their plan to make me sign or... "Mom, we're trying to help you," Ethan said, eyes cold. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way." I stood, my hip aching but my mind clear. "And if I refuse?" Lila smiled. "Elderly woman, recent surgery, too many pain meds, disoriented on a boat." She shrugged. "Tragic accidents happen all the time. I had raised this man, paid for his schooling and wedding, and now he nodded while his wife threatened my life. You're both insane if you think you'll get away with this. Actually, we've thought it through." Ethan pulled a folder. "Your signature here, transferring all assets to us for your protection, and we all go home happy." I looked at the papers, at my son's expectant face, at Lila's phone recording. Then I looked at the ocean, vast and less frightening than the two people who were supposed to love me. "Go to hell," I said. Lila moved behind me and whispered about sharks. The push wasn't violent, just a shove when I was off balance. Over I went, navy dress and all, into the cold Atlantic. As I hit the water, I heard Ethan shouting, "Mom! Oh God, Mom!" But I also heard Lila, low on the phone. "Yes, file the emergency petition Monday. She's clearly not competent." Then the water closed over my head. I'm a strong swimmer. Thomas and I did laps, but the cold shocked my system, and my clothes dragged me down. I kicked off my shoes and broke the surface, gasping, just in time to see the yacht speeding away. They were leaving me to die. That's when I spotted the fishing boat. Captain Nolan Briggs was the kind of man who'd jump into shark-infested waters to save a stranger. "Holy hell, what happened?" he asked, as he and his teenage grandson, Mason, hauled me aboard the Seabird Grace. I was shivering. Nolan wrapped me in a blanket while Mason started the engine. My family, I managed. The yacht. We saw them take off, Nolan said. Didn't look back once. What kind of people leave someone floating in the ocean? The kind who inherit $3 billion if I'm not around to stop them, I thought. Out loud. The kind who aren't really family. Nolan radioed the Coast Guard while Mason tucked another blanket around me. Seabird Grace to Coast Guard. Woman pulled from the water off Gloucester. Conscious, needs medical attention. Wait, I said, grabbing Nolan's arm. Please don't let them know you found me. Not yet. He studied my face. You in trouble? Yes. I need to reach shore without anyone knowing I survived. Can you help? Mason looked uncertain. Grandpa, shouldn't we? Sometimes the right thing doesn't look like following the rules, Nolan said. He keyed the radio again. Coast Guard, Seabird Grace, false alarm, debris in the water, all clear. As we headed toward a small private dock, I told them about Ethan and Lila, the money, the papers. Nolan listened, his expression darkening. So they'd rather be rich orphans than broke kids with a living mother, he said. Apparently. So what are you going to do? I was officially dead as far as they knew. They'd report me missing, play the grieving family, and execute whatever paperwork they'd prepared. But here's the thing about being supposedly dead. It gives you options you never had while alive. I'm going to let them think they won, I said, and then I'm going to destroy them. Nolan dropped me at a hidden cove where he knew a woman who ran a cash-only bed and breakfast. No questions asked. Her name was Mrs. Kwan, a no-nonsense septuagenarian who took one look at my soaked state and put a pot of soup on without a word. As long as you're not bringing trouble to my door, you're safe here, she said, sliding a steaming bowl toward me. That night, while Ethan and Lila were presumably filing police reports about their tragically missing mother, I sat in Mrs. Kwan's warm kitchen, wearing borrowed clothes and planning their ruin. Nolan agreed to be my eyes on the docks. His charter boat gave him reasons to linger where Ethan kept the yacht, and fishermen hear everything worth hearing. Before we plotted, I needed to know the story they were telling. On Mrs. Kwan's old computer, I found the headlines. The tragic boating accident that claimed the widow of tech magnate Thomas Hale. The grieving son describing the confusion and memory lapses in recent months. The daughter-in-law wiping tears while voicing concern for my safety. They even included a photo of me at Ethan's birthday last year looking bewildered. Because it had been a surprise party no one warned me about. The obituary was already up. Eleanor Hale. Beloved mother and grandmother. They'd even directed donations to an Alzheimer's charity to cement the narrative of cognitive decline. Bastards, I muttered, shutting the laptop. The funeral was crowded for a woman allegedly fading into dementia. From behind a maintenance shed at the cemetery, Nolan and I watched through binoculars. Ethan and Lila stood in coordinated black by an expensive empty casket, accepting condolences like seasoned politicians. People I loved were genuinely crying. What struck me more was who wasn't there. See who's missing, I whispered. My financial advisor, Gregory Pike, my attorney, Elaine Porter, my accountant, Nathan Trent. The trio who normally never skipped a billionaire client's funeral. Maybe they've got estate duties, Nolan said. Or maybe they can't look anyone in the eye, I answered. After, we drove a winding route back to Mrs. Kwan's. I'd been dead 4 days and was beginning to understand the advantages. I need to get inside my old house, I told Nolan. Dangerous, he said. Aren't they living there? No. Property records show they kept their own place. But utilities at my Beacon Hill house are still active, and the fridge isn't empty by accident. That night, Nolan dropped me 3 blocks away. I still had my key. I slipped in through the back like a thief in a life I'd built. The rooms felt wrong, like a stage set where the light's a shade too bright. New, expensive furniture under sheets. a leather sofa that cost as much as a car, an entertainment center I'd never have allowed. The kitchen was stocked like someone ate there daily. Imported cheeses, organic produce, fresh pastries. But it was Thomas's study where the truth lay. Paper everywhere, legal drafts, financial statements, and a meticulously typed plan titled Project Eleanor. My name, recast as a code name for erasure. Hands shaking, I used the disposable camera Nolan had given me to photograph everything. Their calendar of episodes documenting stage confusion, notes on coaching me at doctor visits, instructions for recording disoriented reactions at social events, like the birthday photo. A hospital mix-up 3 months ago. They'd swapped prescriptions. The most chilling document was a letter signed only MT. Accelerate the timeline. Eleanor is asking too many questions about the POA. Move to Phase 3 within 2 weeks. According to their schedule, Phase 3 was my death. Headlights washed the drapes. Voices at the front door. I slid toward the back just as they came in, still in their funeral blacks. Think Dr. Porter bought it? Lila asked. She was crying too hard to think, Ethan said. Probate opens Monday. MT says we'll have access within 6 weeks. I eased into the garden, heart pounding, then froze. A baby was crying. Ethan and Lila had never mentioned children. The sound hollowed me out with a different kind of fear. Back at the corner, Nolan rolled up. You look like you saw a ghost, he said. Worse, I told him. I heard my replacement. The photos were developed at a discreet 1-hour shop Nolan trusted. The evidence was damning. Timelines, forged medical notes, projections of how they'd spend my money. Then, tucked under a pile, I found it. A birth certificate for baby Hale, born 3 weeks ago. Mother, Lila Hale. Father, Ethan Hale. 4 days ago on the yacht, Lila had not been recovering from childbirth. This is fake, I told Nolan. So whose child is it? I didn't sleep. By morning, I had a plan. I'm going to follow them, I told Nolan over breakfast. Find out where the baby goes. Babies don't vanish for 8 hours while their parents perform grief. Mrs. Kwan set down tea. You need help. I know someone who owes me a favor. Professional, discreet. I hesitated. I can't pull others into this. Dear, she said, they tried to kill you. It's already bigger than you. By noon, I sat above a sandwich shop in Gloucester across from a man with alert gray eyes. Dylan Cross, private investigator, former cop. I told the story again. So you want me to tail your son and daughter-in-law, identify the baby's origin, and find this MT? He summarized. Yes. Payment? He asked. Your assets are frozen. I slid an envelope across. Emergency cash from a safe deposit box Thomas had insisted on. He nodded. 2 weeks of surveillance to start. I'll need photos, addresses, any known associates. I handed him everything, including the shots of Project Eleanor and the MT letter. Dylan studied the signature. Distinct hand. I'll run comparisons. Safety protocol, he added. You check in every 12 hours. If you miss, I go to the police with everything. I agreed. Less official involvement for now, but a failsafe mattered. By the second day, Dylan had more than I'd learned in months. Your son's busy, he said, spreading photos on Mrs. Kwan's table. Ethan with lawyers, bank visits, and 3 trips to a discreet medical facility outside Boston. Willow Ridge Reproductive Services. Very exclusive, very private. They specialize in surrogacy arrangements for wealthy clients who don't want attention. My stomach turned. They bought a baby. Not off the shelf, Dylan said. Custom. Newborn who could pass for their biological child. Arrangements began 8 months ago. Paid in cash. Birth certificate drafted in advance. Mrs. Kwan poured coffee and leaned in. And MT? Dylan slid over a photo of a woman in her 40s with auburn hair and a costly briefcase, shaking Ethan's hand outside a law firm. Marisol Trent, partner at Trent & Bellamy, estate planning for Boston's elite. My chest tightened. Trent? My accountant is Nathan Trent. Are they related? Spouse, Dylan said. Marisol's niche is what she calls family transition planning. She identifies wealthy seniors with complicated heirs and helps those heirs manage the transition by manufacturing evidence of dementia, arranging legal control of assets, and, when necessary, orchestrating accidents. She's done it at least 6 times I can document. I remembered meeting her at a charity gala Ethan dragged me to. She was very interested in my trust structures. Because she intended to dismantle them, Dylan said. She has contacts inside hospitals and probate courts. He had more. The baby's birth mother, a 17-year-old from Maine named Lily Carver, recruited at a shelter with the promise of $50,000 to help a loving couple. According to records, Lily died from complications during delivery. A nurse described a healthy pregnancy ending in sudden cardiac arrest, minutes after a routine medication administered by a legal liaison, Marisol Trent. I felt sick. This wasn't just theft. It was a market in human life. We had to move. Ethan and Lila had filed preliminary probate claims arguing I died intestate and that any existing documents were invalid due to my alleged incompetence. Dylan produced a forged will bearing my counterfeit signature, leaving everything to Ethan with provisions for future children. It tracked perfectly with the baby they'd acquired. We debated how to strike. Confronting them privately would give them time to regroup, going fully public before we understood the network could spook Trent. I chose option 3, strategic haunting. They need to know I'm alive, but not what I know, I said. Scare them into mistakes. We learned the baby stayed at my former house during the day, with a private nurse hired through one of Trent's shell companies. Her name was Carla Pearson, 35, single mom, clean record. A good person, Dylan said. Probably believes she's helping a grieving family. She deserved the truth. Late that morning, while Ethan and Lila met downtown with Marisol to divvy up my assets, I rang my old doorbell. Carla answered in scrubs sprinkled with cartoon giraffes, a bottle in hand. Can I help you? Hello, Carla, I said gently. My name is Eleanor Hale. I believe you're caring for my grandson. Color drained from her face. My name had been all over the news. But I've also read that I died, I said. Fascinating story. Not accurate. Inside, a perfect newborn watched me with solemn brown eyes. What's his name? They said, Thomas Jr., she replied, but they haven't decided. They haven't because they don't know him, I said softly. Because he's not theirs. I showed her photos, documents, the outline of Marisol's scheme, and Lily's name. Tears streaked down Carla's face as she looked at the baby. He's an orphan, she whispered. Yes, and if they succeed, he'll never know who his mother was. Carla agreed to help, document everything, keep me informed, and protect the child until we could place him safely. They're home by noon most days, she said, to check on him and make calls. Perfect, I said. By then they'll have received my first message. While I was with Carla, Dylan waited across from Trent and Bellamy with a long lens. At exactly 11:47, a courier delivered a note on my engraved stationery to Marisol's receptionist. Dear Ethan and Lila, reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated. We need to talk. Love, Mom. P.S. Give my regards to little Thomas Lily. He's beautiful. Minutes later, according to Dylan, all 3 bolted from the office white with panic. Psychological warfare had begun. And that afternoon, when they returned to my former house, expecting the facade intact, they were going to learn their dead problem had spent 6 days becoming their worst living nightmare. I was sitting in my favorite armchair, The one Thomas bought me for our 20th anniversary, when Ethan and Lila came home from their meeting with Marisol Trent. I'd positioned myself to be the first thing they saw when the door opened. The look on their faces was worth 6 days in the Atlantic. "Hello, darlings," I said pleasantly. "How was the meeting? I hope you didn't sign anything important while I was away." Lila screamed, a raw, tearing sound like a nightmare breaking the skin of reality. Ethan froze in the foyer, keys dangling from his hand, as if blinking hard might make me vanish. "Surprised?" I asked. I have to say, the reports of my death were terribly premature, though I did enjoy reading my own obituary. Alzheimer's donations, very theatrical. Carla stepped in from the kitchen, cradling the baby. She'd been waiting as we planned, ready to witness everything. "Mrs. Hale asked me to bring the baby," she said, voice steady but tight. She wanted to meet her grandson properly. "Her grandson?" Lila croaked. "Carla, this woman is..." "Dead?" I offered. "Yes, I've read that. Turns out drowning is more difficult than people assume, especially when decent folk pull you from the water." Ethan found a sliver of voice. "Mom, we thought the Coast Guard..." "The Coast Guard searched for debris, not survivors," I said. "Funny how that happens when no one actually reports a person overboard." I took the baby from Carla, settled him in my arms, and felt a surprising stillness move through me. "Hello, little Thomas Lily. I'm your real grandmother, the kind who doesn't buy heirs with blood money." "His name isn't Thomas Lily," Lila snapped, recovering composure in brittle shards. "His name is whatever we decide because he's our son." "Is he?" I asked gently. "Tell me, Lila, when exactly did you give birth? Because 4 days ago on that yacht, you didn't look like a woman 3 weeks postpartum." "It was private," she said. "Yes. So private the real mother died during delivery under mysterious circumstances." I raised my eyes. "Did you know her name was Lily Carver? 17, from Maine. No family to notice when she disappeared." Silence swallowed the room. Carla covered her mouth. Ethan whispered, "That's impossible. We would never..." "Never what?" I said. "Never conspire with Marisol to run an illegal surrogacy pipeline? Never stage episodes to portray me as incompetent? Never push your mother off a yacht and leave her to die? Which part precisely is beyond you?" "You can't prove any of this," Lila said too quickly. "Accusations aren't evidence." "How fortunate," I answered, "that I brought evidence." I nodded to Carla, who carried the baby down the hall to his room as I drew a manila folder from beneath the chair cushion and spread photos across the table. Ethan and Lila meeting with Marisol, multiple trips to Willow Ridge Reproductive Services, cash withdrawals lining up with payments, the forged will text, the Project Eleanor timeline. "This is Marisol Trent," I said, tapping her face. "She calls it family transition planning. I call it murder, dressed in legalese." "Ridiculous," Lila muttered, but her eyes were wide and fixed, as if the pictures themselves radiated heat. "I also have a list of families she's helped. 6 I can document, likely more," I continued. "Accidents, falls, overdoses, always following a sudden bloom of dementia that turns out to be induced by careful interference." I slid over Lily's death certificate and a sworn statement from a nurse. Healthy pregnancy, sudden arrest minutes after a routine injection from a legal liaison, Marisol. Ethan had gone gray. "Mom, please. This is getting out of control." "It got out of control when you hired a killer," I said. "And in case you're wondering whether this conversation will fade into rumor, it won't." I opened Thomas's old desk drawer and held up a small digital recorder. "Massachusetts is a one-party consent state. I consent. We've recorded every word. Yours, mine, and soon Marisol's." Lila sprang up. "You can't use that. It's entrapment." "It's evidence," I said, "of conspiracy, fraud, and accessory to murder. Evidence that will put you where you belong. Ethan swallowed. What do you want? My money back, I said. The baby placed properly and legally, with truth as bedrock. Marisol arrested, and the two of you living long enough to think about what you tried to do. Lila's eyes hardened. And if we refuse? You won't like that ending. I gave them 24 hours in name only. The clock was already gone. That night, Dylan called with an update that cut the air like a wire. They spent the night on the phone with Marisol, he said. They mentioned a cleaner, the kind who makes problems disappear permanently. We moved fast. Mrs. Kwan on the phone, Nolan at the door, the three of us ferrying to a safe island cottage Dylan had arranged. Dawn painted the water in cold silver as we anchored there, and Dylan arrived with more. The cleaner was found dead in his hotel. Single shot, professional. Marisol is cutting threads, he said. If she's burning her trail, she'll eliminate anyone who can talk, including Ethan and Lila if they wobble. Definitely you, and possibly the baby. An orphaned infant with no guardians is a loose end. The thought set my blood to ice. She'll kill him, I said. House fire, carbon monoxide, something neat. I stood so abruptly my cup smashed on the floor. We have to get him. Too dangerous, Dylan said. They're watching the house. Then I'll give them what they want, I answered. Me. It's reckless, Mrs. Kwan said. It's necessary, I replied. For the child. For the truth. Dylan's team had already seeded the house with recorders and cameras. Carla had placed them flawlessly while Ethan and Lila were out. We coordinated. I would present myself at 6. Marisol was due at 7. Dylan would stage nearby with a federal task force he'd quietly looped in. He'd once worn a badge, and in truth he still did. An undercover consultant to a broader investigation into elder-targeted racketeering. At 6 sharp, I knocked on my own door. Ethan opened it, haggard, eyes blown with fear. Mom, he whispered, a boy's voice trapped in a man's mouth. Hello, Ethan, I said. I'm here. Lila paced the living room, all that brittle composure ground to powder. She'll be here soon, Marisol, she said. She wants to talk. I'm sure she does. I never wanted this, Ethan said. But you let it happen, I replied. Because $3 billion felt heavy enough to tip you against your mother's life. At 7 o'clock exactly, Marisol arrived. Compact, immaculate, carrying a leather portfolio. She crossed my living room like she owned it and extended her hand. Mrs. Hale, she said, utterly calm. I'm relieved you survived your boating accident. We have a great deal to discuss. We do, I said. She sat, opened her folio, and spoke as if negotiating freight rates. You've caused trouble for my clients, she said. They followed instructions, and yet here you are, alive and apparently informed about matters that don't concern you. Murder concerns me, I said. Especially my own. I prefer the term estate acceleration, she said. We alleviate the burden of prolonged decline, preserve dignity, and simplify transition. How many dignified deaths have you arranged? I asked. She consulted her notes. Over 5 years, my clients and I have successfully resolved 37 cases. She said it as if reporting quarterly earnings. And I'll be number 38. 39, she corrected politely. We resolved another matter earlier today. As for the infant, tragic carbon monoxide leak. These old systems are so unpredictable. I looked at Ethan and Lila. This is the future you bought? Not just my death, his too? They sat mute, mannequins in funeral black. The baby complicates inheritance optics, Marisol continued. It's cleaner to eliminate the variable. That's when I smiled. Miss Trent, I said, voice soft as a fuse. There's something you should know. Yes? You're under arrest. The house erupted. Agents poured through doors and windows in a synchronized rush. voices layered with command. "Federal agents! Hands where we can see them!" Marisol bolted toward the kitchen and made it 6 feet before 3 agents brought her down. Others moved to the sofa. Ethan and Lila didn't fight. "Ms. Trent," said Special Agent May Park, stepping forward. "You're under arrest for racketeering, conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, and elder abuse." She turned to me with a small, fierce smile. "Mrs. Hale, that was brave." Dylan emerged from the hall, no longer hiding the badge. "We've been tracking Trent for 2 years," Agent Park said as technicians flooded the room. "She never touched anything directly. No fingerprints on the violence. We needed her voice on record." "You have it," I said. "All of it." Carla came up from the basement with the baby, both unharmed. "Is it over?" she asked. "The dangerous part," I said, taking Thomas Lily into my arms. "Now comes the legal grind." It did, for months. Ethan and Lila were charged with conspiracy, fraud, elder abuse, and accessory in Lily Carver's death. They took pleas, 25 years for Ethan, 20 for Lila. Marisol went to trial and was convicted on all counts, life without parole. The network unraveled across New England. 17 more arrests, corrupt examiners, probate fixers, predatory relatives. Investigators traced more than 200 million siphoned from the old and isolated. The baby was the heart of it all. I petitioned to adopt him. The court supported it, and Lily's extended family, found through the investigation, blessed it. In family court, I told the judge his legal name. Thomas Lily Hale, I said. Thomas for his grandfather, Lily for his mother. Hale because that is the family that will love him and tell him the truth. The judge, a woman in her 60s who had followed the case, smiled with eyes that had seen grief. "I think Lily Carver would be proud," she said. "Years turned like pages. I'm 72 now, 5 since the yacht. And Thomas Lily is a bright, serious boy who knows exactly who he is. He knows his mother was a brave 17-year-old who wanted him safe. He knows his adoptive father and stepmother tried to use him as a key to a vault. He knows that sometimes protection means telling the hardest truth. Mrs. Kwan still runs her inn, and, on the side, consults for seniors who sense the wolf at the door. Nolan still charters his boat and is a local legend for pulling a grandmother from shark water. Dylan sends a holiday card each year with photos of elders he's helped save. As for Ethan and Lila, they write from prison. Ethan sends apologies dressed as explanations. How he was manipulated, how he was scared, how the numbers made him small. I don't reply. The week I was dead taught me a simple thing. Family isn't blood or obligation or the balance on a statement. It's who shows up in the storm and chooses love over greed. Thomas Lily and I have that kind of family now. No boats, no forged wills, no deaths traded for comfort. Just truth and the stubborn joy of surviving it.